The party are not surprised. Encounter distance is at 30 feet. The party has the initiative here. The bandits are composed of 2 Lightfoot, 1 crossbow and 1 in chain and shield. These bandits are chaotic, so there is no chance of luring them into service. You're probably wondering how characters can tell from the get-go. For simplicity, let's say there are cultural identifiers regarding dress codes, symbolism, bodily markings and so on. The party are going to evade back through the door they spiked and cunningly attempt to lead the bandits to the Toad Room while they themselves make a swift exit down the undiscovered passage where the spring flows to the southeast. The party use their initiative to run 60 feet away, being certain to leave no more than 90 feet between the 2 sides, so the bandits keep up the pursuit. The bandits do not follow. The difficulty the party are in at the moment is that their force is weak. They have already lost their fighter. They haven't picked up much treasure, and there is a heavy risk in continuing to delve. But they would need a comfortable 800 to 1,000 gold pieces just to stand a chance of hiring some men-at-arms. The only asset is their map. But how many adventurers have brought such maps back themselves of this dungeon? What actually makes sense to me here is that they continue taking casualties in their stride. So gold is less stretched and they should focus on experience gain. It's a dog-eat-dog world in the Castle of the Quest. The party take 2 turns to rest, and no wandering monsters appear in that time. The party take a full turn of movement to move back up the northeastern corridor, passing back through the chamber, the spiked door, and turning northwest to avoid the bandits. They follow this northwestern passage until it opens up with the Y-shaped side passages running west and south. All is quiet, and they move west following the southern wall of the passage till they come to a door to their left. Luria steps forward to listen. Silence. 3 of them will open the door. They see a 40-foot by 40-foot room beyond. The party have surprised something inside. They see 2 shape changers, werewolves, just 20 feet in front, slumbering. There is also treasure here, which I'm going to randomly determine the location of. There are 16 spaces, and I think a bell curve will suffice, so the treasure is less likely to be sat in the doorway. I will roll 2d8. The treasure is immediately to the right of the werewolves. While the werewolves slumber, the party will immediately grab and run, but only if the treasure is immediately portable. So we have a question here. Is the treasure in a portable container? An oracle will be handy here. I'm using playing cards for simplicity. Red is yes. Black is no. Jacks are a yes or no but. Queens are a yes or no because. And kings are a yes or no and. I drew a 6 of diamonds, so this is a straight yes. It seems right here to consult a table in the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide for randomly determining treasure containers. Interestingly, this table is an expansion of the Solo Dungeon Adventures tables from Strategic Review number 1. It's quite perfect for our OD&D needs really. I'll expand my version of these tables with this table. The treasure is in sacks. Is the gold and silver mixed? No. Finnick and Ilara will grab a sack each, as their encumbrance allows without penalty. Each sack has 250 gold pieces. Forget the silver. Acquiring treasure costs 20 feet of movement. Escape requires 20 more to exit, assuming the door is held by the rest of the party. A further 20 to round a corner where the party are heading south into uncharted territory. Their actions will rouse the werewolves to pursuit on a roll of a 1 or 2 on a d6. The werewolves hear the disturbance and pursue. The party wins the initiative and flee a further 60 feet. As the distance is over 90 feet, they escape. Let's have a brief timeout to continue the OD&D combat discussion from my last video. I had a couple of questions last time. Daniel from Bandit's Keep, you should absolutely find Bandit's Keep on YouTube and also his podcast of the same name, as he is such a good source of information on OD&D and chainmail combat. Daniel wanted to know if I was using the fighter's fighting capability to determine how many attacks a character gets at each level. Well, sort of. In Men and Magic, Gary says, fighting capability is a key to use in conjunction with the chainmail fantasy rule, as modified in various places herein. An alternative system will be given later for those who prefer a different method. So right off the bat, Gary is saying, fighting capability is not relevant to the alternative combat system. But in Strategic Review number 2, Gary recommends the use of the alternative combat system to resolve the important melees where principal figures are concerned, as well as those involving the stronger monsters. And he also says, when fantastic combat is taking place, there is normally only one exchange of attacks per round. What he's referring to when he says fantastic combat is combat between higher level figures. A hero versus a dragon is a fine example. Gary proceeds to give an example of combat between a hero and a bunch of orcs, and explains that the hero, which is a 4th level fighter, is allowed 1 attack for each of his combat levels, as the ratio of 1 orc versus the hero is 1 to 4. So this is treated as normal, non-fantastic melee. as is any combat where the score of one side is a base 1 hit die or less. What does he mean by this? It's actually simpler than it sounds. In any melee involving a character or monster of 1 hit die or less, characters and monsters with more than 1 hit die will gain 1 attack for each of their hit dice. So a 4th level character against a 1 hit die monster will get 4 attacks, as a 4th level fighter has 4 hit dice. A 2 hit die monster against a 1 hit die character gets 2 attacks, and so on. Any situation that does not involve 1 hit die characters or 1 hit die monsters, only 1 attack is exchanged per round. This is known as fantastic combat. The use of the term fantastic combat under the Alternative Combat System is definitely an overselling term, because what it really boils down to is combat at higher level with stronger monsters don't include any extra attacks. Only 1 exchange of attacks is made, and then, as the strategic review combat example explains, a 6-sided die is used to determine how many hit points of damage is sustained. So when Gary uses the term combat level, how do we know he's talking about hit dice? Well, in Monsters and Treasure, Gary says, attack defense capabilities versus normal men are simply a matter of allowing 1 roll as a man type for every hit die, with any bonuses being given to only 1 of the attacks, i.e. a troll would attack 6 times, once with a +3 added to the die roll. Gary is strictly referring to monsters here, but that does include character types, which can be encountered by player characters. If 1st level characters encounter an enchanter who gets 4 attacks against them, then it would make very little sense if this did not work the other way around. An enchanter is a 7th level magic user with 4 hit dice. An equivalent character should get 4 attacks in combat against a 1 hit dice or less monster. Thus we can deduce that it is not just fighters who get extra attacks in combat, but fighters do gain these extra attacks much faster than clerics and magic users. To further support this ability for any class being able to make extra attacks, look at chainmail. In 20-to-1 combat, a wizard attacks as 2 armoured foot. Gary also mentions bonuses on top of hit die being counted as bonuses to their attack rolls. So 3 + 1 hit die against a 1 hit die monster means 3 attacks, with 1 attack gaining a +1 bonus. So to me, the most obvious interpretation of all this is that hit die dictates number of attacks in non-fantastic combat. A level 4 fighter gains 4 attacks against 1 hit die or less monsters. A level 3 magic user who has 2 hit die gains 2 attacks per round. A level 5 cleric gets 4 attacks with a +1 bonus to 1 of those attacks. This system gives fighters the edge as they gain 1 attack per level according to their character advancement table. Magic users are considerably weaker, needing 8th level and up to gain 4 attacks. Clerics come in a little bit behind fighters. So to summarise, in the Alternative Combat System, combat involving monsters or characters of 1 hit die or less is considered to be non-fantastic combat, and in non-fantastic combat, monsters and characters gain 1 attack per round for each of their hit die, with bonuses to hit die applied to just 1 of these attack rolls. I hope that answers your question, Daniel. PM Carthers asked if the man-to-man table is used when a player with fighting capability of man or man plus 1 fights a monster with 1 or 1 plus 1 hit die. If you're using the alternative combat system, the man-to-man table is never used. This table is only used if you're sticking with the original chainmail system, in which case I would definitely recommend Bandit's Keep, as he plays OD&D this way. In the alternative combat system, taking everything we've just covered, if a character with 1 plus 1 hit die fights a monster with 1 plus 1 hit die, this is actually fantastic combat. A character with 1 hit die versus a monster with 1 hit die is non-fantastic combat, but just 1 exchange of attacks per round. A character with 1 plus 1 hit die fights a monster with 1 hit die. This is fantastic combat with 1 exchange of attacks per round, with the character being able to add +1 to the attack roll. I guess in essence, unlike chainmail, OD&D under the alternative combat system does not contain 3 distinct combat systems. I think it's more accurate to say there are just 2, one of which is 20-to-1 mass combat, and that's rarely used. The other is a D20 based system where multiple attacks are allowed when meleeing creatures with 1 hit dice or less. I hope all this makes sense. No matter how much I dive into this stuff, through playtesting, all kinds of challenges crop up with it. These explanations and arguments for specific approaches reflect where I am at the time of the recording. If you have a different approach, I would love to hear from you. The party safely rest for 2 turns and regain their bearings. They find themselves in a 20-foot by 20-foot chamber, and as soon as they move into it, they stumble upon a warrior travelling through it from the opposite direction. There is no surprise. The warrior gains the initiative. And is immediately hostile, and moves into melee flanking position of Thraena. Alden and Finnick manoeuvre around to the rear, and Lyria moves into the northeast corner to shoot her bow before the melee commences. Now it's important to note that figures can move within 10 feet of the controlled space around friendly figures, but they cannot move through enemy controlled space. But as long as Alden and Finnick keep at least 10 feet of distance as they move around to the rear before closing to melee, I see nothing that would contradict this in the rules as they are written. In Lyria's case, if I understand correctly, she is using the Elven split move and fire ability, and the shot takes place at the half movement portion before melee contact is made, so she is not firing into melee and only needs to edge forward just enough for a clear shot. She misses. There is just 1 exchange of blows between Thraena and the warrior, as although the warrior has 2 hit dice, Thraena has 1 plus 1 as a first level fighter. The warrior strikes the first blow, being the attacker, and as Thraena loses the added protection of her shield, being flanked, the attack hits. Thraena is killed. There will be no return blow. And despite the +2 to the attack roll, made up of a +1 attack bonus and a -1 to AC for a lack of shield, both rear attacks miss. The warrior has the initiative again, and turns to face Alden and Finnick. Elara and Lyria take the rear. Alden and Finnick cannot move through the warrior's controlled space, so must stay in face-to-face melee. The warrior begins the round at second blow position, due to the previous rear attack. The warrior receives 1 hit from the rear attackers. 2 damage, 5 hit points remaining. Both Alden and Finnick miss. Now the warrior can strike. He gets 2 attacks against Alden, as the hit die ratio between the 2 figures is 2-to-1. One of the strikes hits. For just 1 hit point of damage. Very lucky. The party has initiative and decides to countermove. The warrior strikes 2 blows at Alden and misses. One of the rear attacks against him hits. For 3 points of damage, he has 2 remaining. Alden and Finnick miss once again. Party has initiative again for the next round. No movement. Lyria hits and finishes off the warrior. The party retrieve 100 gold pieces of treasure from the warrior, leaving 400 silver behind due to its weight.